You have exactly 3 seconds to like and subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, I'll appear in your dreams tonight. To ask for a donation for that cup of coffee, link below.
Music. 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 So, the biggest conflict in Europe since World War II has begun to show the first signs of ending. So, Western Power 1, also considered in the context of rivals embroiled in internal strife, President Putin's team achieved a strategic victory on the battlefield in music, Ukraine. But even if that happens, should Russia celebrate? And what has the United States, the world's most powerful nation, prepared for this clearly possible situation? Let's find the answer in today's video. Music. Although currently in a favorable position, war is unpredictable, especially in a large and complex conflict like the current one in Ukraine. Therefore, to stay updated on the latest war information, please like and subscribe. This is a great motivation for the CD team to release increasingly improved products. But to answer the question of what Russia will do after achieving victory, we need to clarify some issues regarding what constitutes a strategic victory. Historians and military scientists often refer to this concept to describe one or a series of tactical victories that achieve the true objectives of the entire campaign. However, in special cases, a tactical defeat can be a strategic victory. A typical example is a defeat that inflicts irreparable damage on the enemy, known as. In this type of victory, country with large resources often possess superior logistical capabilities. Pyro's victories are more likely to instill confidence in the enemy due to their superior recovery capabilities. Therefore, to determine whether a warring party has achieved a strategic victory, we can consider the war objectives of each side. Whoever achieves their own war objective is the victor. The most convincing evidence is that one side must concede almost all the unequal conditions imposed by the enemy, or have a certain the side suffering such losses that it is impossible to restore the balance of power with the opponent to what it was before the war began. Let's now consider Russia's war objectives as these consist of 2 basic points. Firstly, to firmly consolidate the 4 regions to be annexed by Russia in Luhansk, Donetsk, and secondly, to change current Ukrainian government according to Russia's wishes. Therefore, in this video, let's assume Russia achieves at least one of these 2 points, without considering the situation where they declare victory by changing their objectives or manipulating the concept of turning defeat into victory on paper. First, we will look at the case that any fan of Russia and President Putin would love: the Russian army overthrowing the Zelensky regime and maintaining the 4 annexed regions. By achieving this, Russia will obviously successfully impose significant influence over a region that was once the second most important republic after Russia from the Soviet era. They can also deploy a large amount of weapons to exert serious pressure. NATO's strongest point. You might not know that Russia and Ukraine are the world's largest and 5th largest wheat exporters, accounting for approximately 25% to 30% of the global wheat supply. Ukraine also possesses vast and abundant natural resources, including natural gas, coals, mainly in the 4 regions controlled by Russia: lithium, titanium, iron, and other non-metallic minerals. Many companies from Europe, China, and Russia have fiercely competed for the right to exploit these resources in Ukraine, exerting influence over Ukraine also allows Russia to unleash its power globally without being restricted by easily frozen seaports as before. Thus, not only does it gain a strategic position, but President Putin can also weaponize not only crude oil and gas, but wheat as well. After a long period of weakness, the Russian economy has the opportunity to expand and recover with strong growth. Mexico, on the other hand, has not had self-destructive actions that resonated with people like in the 1990s. This strengthens Russia's position compared to its rivals. China, like it, has also significantly risen to become a comprehensive power with a major position in the supply chain, not just supplier of strategic resources and defense products. The strong economic development will create a chain reaction, helping Russia improve its military capabilities. The world's largest nation is contemplating massive projects that could become reality. The most impressive of these is the Martin nuclear-powered aircraft carrier project, with a displacement of 4,000 tons, capable of carrying 40 fighter jets such as the Mi-29. In addition, older aircraft carriers that China currently possesses could be acquired or newly built to strengthen its naval forces. While not yet on par with the US, this could still consolidate the nation's position, especially in areas surrounding Venezuela, Iran, and possibly Cuba. Although this is still too far-fetched. If not, a position similar to the former NATO, but with less robust economic development and new strategic positions. World's largest nation to exert pressure on European NATO countries. The strong resurgence of Russia will force European countries that have long been unwilling to fall into a struggle with superpowers like Hungary and Serbia to consider siding with Russia. Belarus, a military counterweight to the US in Europe, is officially formed alongside China, creating a pincer movement against the United States across the ocean. For neighboring countries with a significant degree of animosity towards Russia in Europe, such as Latvia, Estonia, and Finland, if they do not change their attitude towards the world's largest nation, they will inevitably face immense pressure stemming from deep-seated historical issues. Finland, Poland, and other neighboring countries, despite being neighbors, have always tended to distance themselves from Russia's sphere of influence. A year after the outbreak of conflict in Ukraine, Latvia announced on January 23, 2023, they downgraded diplomatic relations with Russia to Chargate affairs. They also urged Germany and many NATO countries to send more weapons to help them gain an advantage in the war with Russia. On the ministers of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania issued a joint statement according to which the countries would adopt a common approach in implementing the European Union sanctions against Russia and Belarus from December 31, 24. In Lithuania, there was also an effort to make Latvian the sole language used in schools. This plan is expected to be 2025, despite opinion experts that it may violate the prohibition against discrimination against ethnic minority groups speaking foreign languages. However, some opinions agree with the actions of the Lithuanian government, arguing that the policy of imposing the language of the majority ethnic group in schools and administration is a common way for a country to assert its sovereignty. This has been done in most countries. The current situation is such that the fact that Moscow is using discrimination against Russian-speaking countries as a pretext to pressure countries like Monaco, or previously Ukraine, inadvertently gives the government of that country the right to support, especially right factions. Therefore, don't be surprised in the event of a Russian victory in Ukraine. They proceed with plans to encircle and impose sanctions on unfriendly group, regardless of the uncompromising attitude from their opponents in Russia, its neighboring countries. A Russian attack has also been proposed, but with their extremely limited resources, it's hard to believe they can withstand, even the enormous Russian army. However, at least we do have to worry too much about Russia launching a special military operation against these countries, including those that were once part of the old alliance, even though they are deeply divided. The shrewd leaders of NATO cannot ignore NATO's 5 principles, which are the soul of the entire bloc, aimed at protecting the position of all members. Russia itself is not so desperate as to do something like that. Desperate individuals resort to reckless actions, knowing full well that hasty attack on NATO countries would be irreversible. Clearly, NATO's 5 principles cannot be disregarded, as it's crucial to protect all members of the bloc. Greater power comes with greater responsibility, and the burden of protecting weaker members falls heavily on the United States. Even powerful NATO, like Germany and France, for example, have to deploy tens of thousands of troops to protect smaller NATO countries, while maintaining the status quo is difficult for superpowers in the short term. In the long run, it's hard to believe the idea of a strong nation unconditionally protecting a weaker one is feasible, especially for Western-style countries, where the use of taxpayers' money is often used as a tactic to attract votes. And of course, the mission of using one's own money to protect the national security of others is prevalent. Given the inherent limitations of NATO and the EU, macroeconomics is very difficult to sympathize with from the German poppy. Many experts fear that a Russian victory will cause its global trade position to completely collapse, and that Russia will then stimulate extremism and populism to take advantage of this opportunity. But of course, we cannot ignore the possibility that these countries, due to some event, will switch to a wartime mode, creating the risk of another conflict breaking out on the continent across the ocean. The US may have to choose between allocating resources between maintaining a military presence in the Asia-Pacific or deploying to Europe to support the Min in the face of any move by Russia. NATO law, credibility, and faces the most serious challenge since the collapse of the Soviet Union. Russia is also missing the opportunity to gradually disperse resources to weaken the world's most powerful superpower, aiming to push the US out of Europe. Yes, simply, they continue to strengthen their relationship with China on the basis of a better relationship between the two. The alliance between the two countries at the present, as you know, includes not only NATO members in Europe but also Japan and South Korea in Asia, in a long-term plan to confront China. These two countries have conflicting interests with the West, and more of Japan, an ally of the has intense disputes with both Russia and China. Currently, China has emerged as a comprehensive counterweight to the US, although not powerful as the former Soviet Union. However, China, more subtle tactic, making it difficult for the US to clearly define its relationship with Russia. The best immediate option, after achieving victory in Ukraine while still facing isolation from the West, is dependence on China for consumer goods and complex electronic components. Russia also needs a pro-China country shoulder the burden in its goal of weakening the United States and Japan by supporting or ignoring China's territorial claims against neighboring countries like Japan, South Korea. At the same time, these countries also support China, the situation, the South China Sea, and the East China Sea is likely to become more volatile with confrontations between the two most powerful forces. For the first time in their relatively short history, the United States and China will face the risk of losing their position as the dominant world powers. The US cannot wage wars in the way it currently does to stimulate arms sales. It needs to be more serious because it no longer holds absolute, which would not only bring enormous benefits to China. According to analysts, Russia will not miss the opportunity to attract new allies in Africa and Latin America. Some analyses show that not only the West but also many other countries with territorial disputes are concerned that Putin's success will inspire countries considering invading the territories of their neighbor. Indeed, throughout history, the territory of most countries has been shaped by a process of expansion and contraction through individual, as you are seeing on the screen. Due to policies from the Soviet era, much of the territory of these two countries has overlapped. This is also the source of their ongoing conflict for several decades since the collapse of the Soviet Union in Africa, where the influence of tribal and clan cultures remains. Ethnic conflicts continue to simmer day by day, And it is difficult to imagine what would happen if disgruntled forces possess sufficient weapons, food, and resources to reclaim historical land. This is an old but still very logical reason for a force to wage conflict. Russia could take advantage of the West's confusion and instability to fill the void in Africa and Central Asia, drawing emerging powers to its side, a crucial turning point in the plan to dominate the world. According to the principle that the enemy of my enemy is my friend, new powers in impoverished African countries, struggling with rulers living luxurious lives and burdened by huge Western debts, would find it difficult to refuse an offer of assistance from Russia. Current. Although Russia has an advantage, it has not yet been able to deliver any decisive blow to Ukraine. They have begun taking initial steps to oust the West from Africa. Previously, we could also see the active involvement of the Russian forces in Africa. The summit, St. Petersburg on July 27th and 28th marked a significant turning point in Russia's strategy to garner support from developing countries in Africa. Poor Africa. All they need right now is food, medicine, and energy. And Russia provides these. There were many meetings in St. Petersburg where Russia expressed its understanding of Africa's difficulties, not only increasing food supplies to Africa threefold compared to the same period in 2022, but also announcing its desire to support Africa in healthcare. And Russia also did not forget to guide African countries to participate in Russia's de-dollarization trajectory, based on the two initial goals of reducing the need for exploiting misunderstandings and winning the goodwill of African leaders. Putin has gradually persuaded African countries to participate in a system of converting trade transactions between Russia and Africa into local currencies, including the Russian ruble. Therefore, it can be predicted that after gaining control in Europe, with the concerns of NATO, Russia's assistance to ambitious countries in Africa will become even greater, continuing to erode the influence of the US and the West. But what if Russia's victory is not complete? This is a bit of a game for those who skip from the second minute of the video. We will consider the scenario where Russia completely gains control of the four eastern regions but fails to overthrow the opposing Ukrainian government. This requires at least a ceasefire from Ukraine will initially refuse to recognize the four newly annexed regions by Russia. The situation of urban migration in Eastern Europe will also become tense as a result. The Ukrainian government may exploit the pain of losing territory to turn Russia's accusations of militarization into reality. Things won't change much in Russia, except they will have to continue their arms race, concentrating forces westward to prevent the risk of infiltration from Ukraine or the risk of rebellion from other countries. If the arms race intensifies further, Russia could increase support for countries like Iran and North Korea, resulting in a new wave of nuclear proliferation. By the end of that phase, there could be 15 or more nuclear powers, instead of the current 9. This would increase the risk of miscalculation and technical failures, but it would be a major victory for the Russians. It would also be the moment when those who yearn for with Russia as one of their biggest desire, lose credibility with the West as the guarantor of security. Revised nationalist actors like China, Russia, Iran, and other, along with their ally, will, and so would a new international order, the nascent universality. Western-style human rights will be relativized in state. Centralized power will be consolidated globally. Western, already the norm in many places, will be weakened worldwide. Life in developed countries in Europe will become more insecure, poorer, and lonelier. Music. These are predictions about what Russia will do after its victory. Indeed, the trend of new principalities seeking to overthrow the world order that is holding them back to create a new pole that benefits them has always been a recurring theme throughout human history. For a new dominant power could be a turning point for human development, or it could be a step backward. Only the future can answer that. But these are merely opinions based on documents we have collected from both Russia and the West. So, what do you think are some things Russia will do after its victory in Ukraine that we haven't mentioned? Please leave your comments below in the comment section. Now, let's get to the hello and see you again. wishing everyone a good day with their family.